This is the Hope Not Nope podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by nope.
I'm Dr. Dillon Caswell.
And I'm Brandi.
And we're here to bring you out of the nope and into hope. Welcome back to the Hope Not Nope podcast. This voice is not Brandi's voice. This is Dillon's voice because I have hijacked the host seat. I am hosting this podcast. Why? Because it's a year. It's a year since we've been doing this podcast. And the first episode that we ever launched with Brandi talking about how she competed in a competition, how she got through chronic pain, complex regional pain syndrome, and competed in a CrossFit event. In this past weekend, we're now 2 days post-competition, Brandi did that competition again. And today we're going to turn the tables. I'm going to interview her because there's so many life lessons that we can take from each event of this competition. So it's not an episode about CrossFit and working out and physical fitness that'll be sprinkled in there, but it's an episode about how we can take these things that are challenging and apply them to the grander scope of life. So Brandi, go ahead and say hi so the people listening, not watching, know that you're actually here and it's not just me.
Hi, I'm here. Hello, everybody.
So Brandi crushed this competition this past weekend. It was in Lake Placid. It was a 2-day event. For reference, one of Brandi's favorite sports movies is Miracle. And this event was held in the arena that Miracle was played in, not in the Herb Brooks Arena, but in the 1930 rink, the Jack Shea Arena. But we got to go over and see where Miracle on Ice happened. And it was just very surreal. And Brandi was super excited to participate because she got to be in the venue where Olympians compete, which was really cool. Which takes us to event one. We met at Mount Van Hoevenberg, where the bobsled team practices and the bobsled trail is for the Olympian. The event was announced, and there's not really a form that goes out before the events to tell you that, hey, these are the events. This is what you can expect. So it's all pretty unexpected. It was announced, we got there, there's a bunch of mountain bikes. I'm like, oh, Brandi, you might be biking. But the event was a 2-mile run, but then you add on 0.75 miles going up the bobsled trail, like on the bobsled track, which is where Brandi's new nickname came in, Bobsled Brandi. We're going to see how long we can stick with that. But the first question I have for you, for background, Brandi had chronic pain. She had complex regional pain syndrome. Before she had complex regional pain syndrome, she had a stress fracture in her foot. They're always multifactorial, but one factor was running. So now we know that your brain associates running with stress fracture and then stress fracture with complex regional pain syndrome. How do you get back to an activity that has this relation in the brain that this thing is, it could be bad for me. This thing could create an injury, which then could create this prolonged period of suffering. How do you get past that to run 0.75 miles up a bobsled track? Bobsled tracks are meant to go down, which means there's no flex in this. This whole thing is going up. I'm walking up the side of it to try to capture the videos of it. And I got to the top and I'm exhausted and I was walking. And you ran up this thing. What advice do you have to get over the fear?
Well, I think that, number one, it was so cool. And thank you for the awesome intro because you crushed it. But the bobsled, for me in that specific event, the way that I got over any fear that I had was looking at like how cool this opportunity was. I very much love to look at how things can be redeemed and how things can be made redemptive. And so flash backwards to last year, the run was super redemptive. It was my first finish of the year, or my highest finish of that year. And there was rain and things like that. And when I look back at when my foot originally started feeling the stress fracture symptoms, it was a race that was cold and rainy. So then today, or not today, but this past weekend, the exact same conditions were happening. It was rainy, it was cold. We were running through the wood. So it was very similar to how it was like 10 plus years ago when I had my injury. But instead of letting fear like cripple you, I do my best to look at like how can things be like redeemed. And so this past weekend, one way that it was redeemed was me getting excited of like, this is a really great experience. And in all honesty, I also was thinking of my friend who passed away, who I used to run cross country with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about how cool he would think that this was. And so instead of focusing on, oh, what if my foot starts bothering me, or what if it's painful or whatever, like I knew there was going to be discomfort. I knew like you can train hills all you want. Like training a Adirondack like hill, a mountain, you can't do it unless you live up there, and I don't. And then it wasn't even a mountain, it was a bobsled course. So like you can train hills all you want, but like you're going to experience discomfort. But for me, like I think instead of like caving into fear, and I watched girls cave into fear around me. Like I passed a girl and I was like, no, you got this. And she was, no, I don't. And you could just tell like in her voice and her posture that she was giving up and afraid to like continue to keep going. Where for me, I was like, this is redemptive and this is really flipping cool.
Wow. That's a perfect segue in the second question, which I'm not going to ask yet because we're just going to go off the rails. So we strongly believe at Hope Not Nope that you have not recovered from an injury until you're able to perform the activity that played a role in that injury in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how we know that you have movement freedom. That's how we know that fear is not dictating what you can do or can't do anymore. But the follow-up question I have to that is, how do you know that you're ready to redeem that?
Well, I think there's an emotional and a mental readiness, obviously, that anyone needs to work through. But I think to know that you're physically ready, there is graded exposure. Like I think early on in my healing journey, I would go play basketball, but then I'd be in like really excruciating pain for like 2 weeks because of going to play basketball for 2 hours when like I hadn't really built up the tolerance yet. So I think there was a level of like I needed graded exposure for a lot longer than, I mean, I had the injury for 8 years, 10 years before I really started coming out of complex regional pain. And so I needed like a lot of baby steps. So I would say that, but then I also think like at some point you just need to have the courage to like take the step and take the risk.
Yeah. And that's beautifully said. And it does. Coming out of chronic pain, we know that physically things have healed, but we know that the relationship that the brain predicts about pain and activity is still there. We talk a lot about when do you lean into pain, when do you not lean into pain? And it's hard because in chronic pain, it is graded exposure and it's leaning into the activities that a little bit fearful of. And it takes a lot of courage to do it. On a previous episode, we said, look, you are not stuck with chronic pain, but it takes an applaudable amount of courage to take those steps into graded exposure, which you took those steps and you took them and you ran with them, which sometimes was good and other times had to pull back because, as Brandi was saying, it's graded exposure. You know, if you have foot pain and you haven't trained running at all, probably not a time to go run a mountain and then go run up a bobsled trail.
Yeah.
But putting in the appropriate work physically and mental conditioning then allows you to have that redemptive moment, because there's a difference of having redemption and then the next day being like, whoa, I did that and I feel good, versus I did that and now I can't walk for 2 weeks. So there's a time and a place for that redemption to happen, both graded exposure mentally and graded exposure physically. Now you said something, and one of my favorite moments of the weekend was just watching Brandi compete with joy. And going into the weekend, we had talks of what kind of athlete do you want to be? Because let's determine that before you get there so that you don't get wrapped up in the emotions and all the things happening around it. And Brandi said, I want to be a fierce athlete on the competition floor, but I want to be joyful. I want to bring people to smiling. I want to bring people joy. And so Brandi's running on the bobsled track and she's like waving at people and talking to her competitors. And the one you said, hey, you got this. And she goes, no, I don't. Which leads me to the second question, in which we switched locations from Mount Van Hoovenberg to the Olympic Center in Lake Placid. And there was a debriefing of the rest of the workouts through the weekend. By the way, there's 5 events, which means we're doing 5 questions.
Stay with us.
Stay with us. So during the debriefing, a lot of athletes got very upset with the movements. And part of it was because the unexpected. Part of it was because they were like, are you kidding me? Like, those are the things that we have to do. But event 2, it had double unders and then shoulder to overhead and then gymnastics on the bar. And then you do that reverse fashion. And it was actually scored as 2 events, but it ended with crossover singles. So the question I have for you in that is because you were so excited about the crossover singles, where a lot of people were mad about those things. But the reason you were excited is because you're like, this brings me back to my childhood and just having fun on the playground. And this is what this is about. Like, this is about having fun. What do you say to people that are taking things way too seriously to just take a step back and remember that we're supposed to have fun?
I literally say what you just said. Like, you were explaining the briefing. So I got in the locker room. We went to the locker room right after the briefing, right before event 2. And I had a couple girls that I kind of already knew in there, and they were like, I've never done a crossover before. I'm so anxious. I'm so nervous. And I was like, just be a kid on the playground. Like, and it's a fun, that event specifically was so fun, especially growing up on a playground. You do jump ropes, you hang upside down. Not that we hung upside down, but like you hang upside down from the monkey bars. CrossFit is like a massive playground if you allow it to be. And so I literally told the girls, just have fun. And I made a joke about how when I was a kid, if you've listened to previous podcasts before, you know I grew up next to a family of 9 kids, and we had 4 in my house and 2 across the road and 4 down the street. And it was an awesome neighborhood. But like my next door neighbors, we would pretend that we were in the movie Jump In and try and do double dutch and try and do all these things. I don't know if we ever got a double dutch. Like, I don't know if we ever actually jumped into the double dutch, but like I have vivid memories of trying to do that as a kid. And when we couldn't do the double dutch, we would go and just do crossovers for fun. And so I don't know. I think it's really that simple of just channel your inner child and like channel the like fun, joyful, like I'm just a kid. I'm just a big kid right now and I want to go play.
And in that event, Brandi had 22 seconds left to do 20 crossovers and got to the jump rope and just busted out these crossovers. It was quite a scene. It was fun.
It was awesome. And that event was really unique too, because I was so pumped about the jump rope, like the crossovers and even the double unders, because I've done better at those. But I was nervous for the chest to bars because that's like a harder movement for me. And the overhead, because it was, like you said, the overhead pressing was heavy for me. And so I knew like I had to fight for every rep in order to actually get to the crossovers, because you had to do a certain set and number within a 3-minute time cap. So that's not that much time to get to the jump rope. And I got to, like you said, with 22 seconds left, but then I think my time, I still had technically 2 more seconds to go, which is cool. So I did 20 in 20 seconds, I guess.
Yeah. And I'll add into this. It's about having fun and figuring out what that fun is for you, right? So before any competition, for any game, ask the question, what kind of athlete do I want to be? And then how do I portray that on the competition field? And that's true in any environment. What kind of parent do I want to be? Okay, now can I portray that in that environment? What kind of husband do I want to be? Now can I portray that in that environment? Are you going to slip up? Absolutely. Is there going to be times that things don't go your way? For sure. But if you can keep reflecting back on that preset definition or idea of who you want to be as an athlete, and more so as a person, that'll help to keep the guardrails on and keep you on that road instead of venturing off into it. You don't want to say, hey, I want to be a joyful athlete and bring people joy and hope. And then you're in event 2, screaming at the event coordinator, screaming at the judges, screaming at your competitors. Like, whoa, I thought you wanted to be a joyful athlete.
Right.
So preset that, know what you want to do, what your actions will be beforehand, so that when it comes up, you can reflect back and go, okay, no, that's not what I want my character to be.
And just another thing to add about that event, one of the coolest parts of the second event itself was that I got to compete in the lane next to one of my best friends. And a year ago, she came to the event, was introduced to CrossFit, and then joined CrossFit because she was so inspired. And so to me, like getting to compete right next to her was so much fun. So I was able to channel that, like, I knew I wanted to come in and have fun. I knew I wanted to do my best. But then to get to be right next to her, before we started, I was like, I don't know if we're going to be in the same lanes next to each other this entire weekend, but the fact that we are right now is so cool. And she was like, this is awesome. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So far, redemption, having fun, inspiring others. And something cool that happened is when Brandi was on event 1, running on the bobsled trail and that whole event, there was a group of little girls next to you guys running and trying to recreate and kind of be like the athlete that were on the course. So you never know who you're inspiring. You never know who's watching. So that's why it's so important to identify that type of person that you want to be. So when people are watching and the little ones are imitating it, that they have a good example to go from, because more than ever, we need those good examples out there. Last point before we move on to question 3 is, during that you said, hey, this is fun, this is a challenge, but this is good. If you're not challenging yourself weekly with some type of new movement or variation of movement, your brain is going to get bored. You want new challenges. That is one of the foundations to motor learning. If you want to keep learning, you want to keep improving, you have to have a movement challenge that you're not going to be successful at right away, but it gives you enough success that gets you excited to come back and do it again. So Brandi was doing crossovers. I was trying to do triple unders because I've never done them before. And I was like, well, let's go. Now I have a new movement challenge to do when I jump rope that now keeps my brain excited, because it's like, okay, I need to learn this. I need to figure out how to do this. And making sure that's part of your program, no matter what it is, if it's walking, if it's running, if it's high rocks, whatever it may be, but continue to have that new challenge that you're taking on so the brain stays excited and wanting to continue to do it. If you do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, your brain's gonna get bored and eventually be like, I need a break from this. All right, question 3. Question 3 was a snatch ladder, which we were expecting a heavy snatch. Reason being is we look at patterns. Last year was a heavy clean and jerk. In the online qualifiers, it was a complex with a clean and a shoulder overhead. So we knew it was going to be heavy, probably an Olympic lift. So our guess was that this is going to be a heavy snatch. So we kind of had that part down. But then it was announced that it's a heavy snatch ladder, in which at the one weight, you're doing, was it 5 reps?
It was 4, 3,
4. So yeah, 4. And then you go to the next weight, 3 reps, the next weight, 2 reps, and then the last weight, 1 rep. All in 1 minute. Originally, I thought it was 4 reps for 1 minute. And if you get through those and you get to do 3 reps at 1 minute, it was 1 minute for all of those lifts. And it was a heavy snatch. It was unexpected. We expected the movement, but it was unexpected, the parameters and how fast you'd have to go
through it.
And this is event 3, really event 4, because event 2 was a 2-parter. So you're feeling kind of tired. You're trying to like get yourself jacked up to do this. But the reality is it's unexpected. It's, hey, I've snatched 105 before, but I haven't done it in that fast of a time domain. But you went out and you did what you could do with what you had available. What advice do you have when you're facing something that's unexpected?
Ooh, great question. I think, to go back to the first question, when you face something unexpected, you can't give in to fear and like let yourself be crippled by fear. You need to face it with courage. So, for example, to use the fitness example, like I went in knowing I've snatched the heaviest weight that I was supposed to get to. I have snatched before, but I knew that it was in a complete different setting. And I also know that when I did snatch that, it wasn't a good formed snatch. Like it was really ugly, and like I basically just muscled it, and I was fresh enough to do it. And so facing this unexpected, like, oh, I have to get to 2 weights that are really hard for me and basically like 95% of what I can do, that was unexpected. But then to do all of that, it was what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 lifts in less than a minute at 4 different weights, like huge, like completely unexpected. But I didn't let myself cripple into fear or worry or even like negative self-talk. I think a year ago I probably would have gotten into the mode of I'm not gonna get that. I suck. Like I'm not that strong. I can't do that. Or instead I was very much like, okay, this is unexpected. But when you face something unexpected, you have to rely on the tools you've already built to get you through it. So for me in this example, I built a lot of positive self-talk, believing in myself, believing that my training, like I put in the work and I have great training, and really just telling myself like, no, you can do this. You got this. And believing it as I'm doing it. And so I think in life in general, when you face things unexpected, you should already have a tool belt of things that can help you through it rather than make you feel crippled by it.
I'm so excited because that leads perfectly into the next question that is
Just plan any other.
related to tools. And just to add in there, you got me thinking about our book, Hope Not Nope, and talking about tools. And I reference in there, growing up, my dad would give me tools and would try to keep me busy so I wouldn't disrupt the project that he was working on. Very, very intelligent father. So I'd go and I'd use these tools and I'd leave them out, start whacking nails into a random board, thinking I'm building something awesome, and then get distracted, go do that other thing. And then a year later, after it's been snowed on and rained on, and my dad hits it with the mower, like, Dill, you left the hammer out again. And I realized that if you have a tool and you misplace it and you don't use it, it's not in the same form or shape to be used when that time comes available. So we have to sharpen these tools and we have to use these tools in times that we don't think that we need them in order to be able to use them when we do need them. And so many people with positive self-talk, they wait until they're in a negative self-talk mindset to then try to switch it to positive self-talk. Like, no, you have to practice this daily and be disciplined in that practice so that when that unexpected time comes, you are able to use it effectively.
Yeah, that's exactly, like literally exactly, because this past year in 2023, my theme, if you've listened, it's confidence. But literally every day in the mirror, I would do like a positive self-talk, like thing in the mirror every day, practice, sorry. And when 2024 hit, I slowly kind of faded away from doing it. And what I found was that as I started training for this, I started getting into a spirit of comparison, a spirit of like, maybe I can't do this, maybe I can't do that. And I had to go back to that practice because I knew it worked in the past. But because I got out of practice, I saw that it was starting to negatively impact me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to not let that tool get too rusty and like go back to it. And I really think that I trained for this event for 6 months, and for the first few months I was struggling, and then I really had to get back into that mode of like positive self-talk, affirmations daily to help me through, because I am a good athlete, but like, if you're not using that tool, for me at least, I can go backward.
Right. And positive self-talk, this is a really, really quick but cool story. I had a client and she mentioned to me that she was like, yeah, I don't know, the positive self-talk is kind of foo-foo. It doesn't really do anything. It sounds good, but like, does it actually do anything? And I realized that when I tell people, yes, here's the research on it, done by David Todd and his colleagues, showing that your strength improves when using positive self-talk in trained and untrained individuals. And all the other research on positive self-talk, like that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So now what we've been doing is doing some muscle testing. Here's a result. Let's go back and let's redo a few of those tests. But now I want you to do it with positive self-talk, which as a quick example, sometimes it looks like I'm safe and I'm strong. All right, I want you to do this test or this assessment as you say, I'm safe and I'm strong. And let's see the difference in that outcome. And it's been very eye-opening to people how much more they can do when they're using that positive self-talk. And that's during a movement task and lifting task. Some people say, I don't have time in the day to do positive self-talk. If you brush your teeth at least once a day, hopefully you're doing it more than that. But if you brush your teeth at least once a day, you have time because there's a mirror right above your sink and you can look yourself right in the eyes and do positive self-talk. It's not adding more onto your day. It's just being intentional with the time that you have available. All right, question 4, because you also set up question 5 perfectly. I want to send 2 batters up to the plate, have them both swing and see what happens, but we won't do that. The question 4, you mentioned you have to use the tools that you have to get the task done. What about in a situation where you may not have the best tool to use for that situation, but you still have to try to complete it? Background reference. Event 4, end up having handstand walks in it. You had to do a bunch of stuff to get to the handstand walk, but then when you get to the handstand walk, it was every 5 feet. If you can handstand walk every 5 feet, then you get a rep. And if you get a rep, that is a huge separator within the competition. Brandi has developed a tool to do a handstand. She doesn't quite have handstand walking yet. So she had a tool, but not the tool that was needed for this. So what do you do in that situation? I have a tool, but it's not the tool for the job, but it's all that I have available. What do you do?
Well, I also want to add, like, I don't necessarily trust that first tool 100% yet.
Yeah.
Like, I have done a couple of handstands, but then sometimes, I would say more often than not, I'll fall really hard on my back. And so there's a lack of trust in the tool. There's a lack of trust in, like, sometimes my ability to fall safely, even though I've never gotten injured. It's just like, as a kid, I was afraid to do cartwheels, and so I never did cartwheels and stuff. I would pretend that I'm a cartwheel my leg because I just never trusted that, like, and it's inverted, right? That inverted position. And so I kind of have a tool, but I don't even trust that tool that much. So then to be asked to walk on my hands, I knew that that wasn't going to happen in the glorious way that so many CrossFit athletes are able to do. And so, again, I think it goes back to not being afraid, having fun, being courageous, because I just decided to, like, donkey kick Superman. You can do it. So I'm being honest. But the only reason I did that was because, like, if they would have asked this a year ago, I wouldn't have even had the courage to put my hands on the ground and kick my feet up like a donkey. I would have been like, well, I can't do that, so whatever. But instead, like, being able to improvise and be creative and things like that really helped me. I didn't end up getting a rep, but I had a minute and a half to really try to get a rep. And instead of giving up and just staring at the ground, I was like, well, I'm just going to improvise and, like, have fun. And I trust myself enough to know I'm not going to hurt myself. I trust my athletic ability. So I knew I didn't have to be afraid. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to improvise. I'm going to be creative. Like, it's not going to be perfect. I wish that I could have, like, maybe tried, like, a cartwheel thing, but I don't think that would have worked either because it still would have been hard to get the hand. So I don't know. I think, like, the importance of being joyful and, like, prioritizing who you are as a person above, like, I guess the quote unquote tools or capabilities that you have or do not have carries you a lot farther than the skill. Like, sure, you want to have the skill, but, like, knowing who you are and that, like, my goal is to have fun in this competition. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have fun trying to do this.
And the amount of smiles and laughs that brought people of you donkey kicking and Superman diving, and your hands have to hit beyond the 5-foot line before your feet do. So if you can imagine Brandi donkey kicking up onto her hands and then trying to launch her body and extend her hands out to reach the 5-foot line, but then repetitively doing that for a minute over and over again. Like, one of our buddies was like, does she have a mouth guard? Like, she's gonna smash her face off the floor. And we're like, yeah, but she'll get that rep if she really wants it. But the people around it of just being, and I want to clarify, they weren't laughing at her.
No.
They were joyful because of how much she was fighting for that one rep, and that she was doing it authentically. Because to do something like that, you have to be able to say, I don't care what the people around me think, because I am doing this for me. How true is that for most of things that we talk about doing that's going to bring you to your authentic self? who are you doing it for? If you're doing it for them, you're going to have embarrassment. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. They're going to poke fun at me. When you start to do those things for yourself to serve other people and you become and practice your authentic self, it brings people joy. And just seeing the people smiling and laughing and just going, that's freaking awesome. Like, Brandi ended up not getting a rep. She got very close, but it was just so cool to see that fight and the joy and the fun in it. And I'm on the side because I get to be her husband and her coach. And I almost yelled out, Brandi, stop. Like, don't do anymore. There's another event left. I don't want you to get hurt. It's not worth it. And she was like, if I was getting hurt, I would have stopped. And I'm like, I know that's true. That's true. But I'm just watching her dive and face planting and Superman diving. And I'm just like, oh gosh, please be okay. Please be okay. But it was awesome to watch it. And so many times people just won't skip in a parking lot. They won't dance in public because they're so worried about what other people are thinking of them. And most of the time, you know what those people are thinking? I wish I had that courage. I wish I could do that. And it's a beautiful thing. It inspires a lot of other people.
I think I spent way too long, like most of my childhood, worried about what other people thought of me. Like I wouldn't go to high school dances, or like in middle school, I'd go to dances, but I'd feel awkward about dancing. If like someone near me was dancing, I wouldn't dance. I wouldn't, even at a concert, I wouldn't even like sway my hips because I was nervous of how someone would think of me. And I look back and I'm like, first of all, they're probably not even looking at me, let alone thinking about what I'm doing. And second of all, they are thinking about what I'm doing and they're judging me. Like, that's on them, not on me. And third of all, they're probably not judging me. They probably think I'm cool, and I am cool. So I think like I'm thankful that I have that spirit now, but I wish that I had that as a kid. And I hope that like the younger generation can have that more and more, because I think it allows you to have less fear and it allows you to have more fun.
It's one of the many reasons we love our nieces and nephews, is they're getting to the teenage years and, the fun dancing with aunt and uncle. It starts to be, well, yeah, no, that's not cool anymore. So I'm going to sit over here with my shades on and collar pop. I think that's still cool, right? I'm going to sit over here with my collar pop and shades on and just watch and not participate. And at our wedding, our oldest nephews were out on the dance floor the whole time dancing. Our two nieces were going wild, and we got some of like the best wedding video footage because of those two just going nuts. And they dance, just those two, and then they come over to us and want to dance with us and want to go dance with everyone. And I imagine that parents are like, oh, I hope that stage doesn't come. And as an aunt and uncle, it's like we love having fun with them, and we also are like, please just don't lose that. Like, keep that like joyfulness and excitement, and don't let society pressure you into becoming this thing that society thinks that you should be. Just be your authentic self, and being able to see them at the wedding and other places, just dancing and having fun and just not worrying about what other people are thinking, is so refreshing and so cool. Question 5, Miracle on Ice, phenomenal movie. Brandi, tell them about our host quick though.
Oh,
tell them about our host.
This is the coolest thing. So we stayed at Airbnb where like the people still live there, but you get your own room and your own bathroom type situation. And this older couple, I don't know, probably in their 70s, maybe, whatever, however old.
Maybe 70s, but they look like a young 50s.
Yeah,
they were awesome.
They look a lot younger than what they are.
Yeah.
But I had my Miracle on Ice hat that I got last year when we were there, just because it's my favorite sports movie. It impacted my life. I have so many fond memories associated with that movie. So I got a hat last year. So it was sitting, and our host said, you need to ask my wife about that day. And so we asked, and she goes, oh yeah, I was there. We're like, you were there at the game? And she says, yeah. And so I obviously was like, well, what was that like? And she goes, it was electric. But like, this couple, they're very much like, they want to go to the art show. They want to go to the symphony. So she very much was like, I wasn't expecting. I just the way that it works is you ask for a ticket to one of the events, and I just casually got the ticket to the semifinal hockey game. And so I went, but before the game, I was outside at the speed skating oval because that was her thing. She thought it was what she wanted to watch. She wanted to watch the skating, right? And so she's sitting there watching it. And basically the way that works is you're just standing outside watching. You don't even have a seat. You're just standing against the fence. And she's standing next to the fence, and this young guy stands next to her, and he has a USA jacket on. So she's like, oh, one of the athletes, like whatever. She gets talking and all this stuff. And he's about to leave, and he goes, well, I want you to have this. And he gives her a USA hockey pin because it was Michael Rizzo from the freaking movie Miracle, the one that's like, yes, I'm Mike Rizzioni and I play for the United States of America. And that's like the best scene in the entire movie. And she just casually has this USA hockey pin from him. And so she showed us the pin, and I was like trying not to fangirl, but I fangirled, but I could have went way harder than what I did. It was insane. So we find that out right before event 5. Mm-hmm. We're cleaning up and like going back. And anyways, the coolest thing ever. Like, and she didn't even care that she had the pin. That's the best part. She was like, yeah, I have this pin. And she's going through all her pins. She's like, yeah, it's here somewhere. And I would have it framed with like a picture of him in my bedroom. Like, it was awesome.
It was incredible.
I love it.
So of course, leading into the event Saturday, what do? You watch Miracle. You get fired up, you watch Miracle, and then you try to go to sleep. And then you wake up and you do the events, and then you go to sleep and you try to sleep, and you wake up and you do it again. So we're watching that. And I want to tie in the earlier question, you said, I started to get a spirit of comparison in there. And I want to point out, when it comes to competition is a beautiful thing if it allows you to become your best self. If it allows you to push yourself further than you ever thought you could go before. Competition is beautiful if it helps to get rid of your self-imposed limitations. Competition is not a good thing when it's only about comparison. When it's only about, well, what are the other girls doing? Can I lift that amount of weight? Can I keep up with them during a run? What's my position on the leaderboard? So we go back to Miracle. Best hockey game.
Of all time.
Herb Brooks, talking with his wife, out on the ice rink, sipping on some hot cocoa, had this moment of realization. And I'm not going to say it directly because I'll fumble the quote, but it was along the lines of, what matters is that 20 years from now, that these guys can look back at this game and say, I poured my heart out. I left it all out there. Doesn't matter if they win. It doesn't matter if they lose. What matters is that they put all that they can into it. And it was so powerful. Like, every time you watch that movie, there's something that takes you. And this time around, that was the quote that really took us of, this is what this is about. It's about giving your all, pouring it out there, detaching from the outcome. So Brandi, I turn the question to you. And how do you do that? How do you, in a competition, detach yourself from a leaderboard? Because doesn't society teach us that how well you did is based upon the number that's next to your name on a leaderboard? Society teaches us that you're good or you're great because of the amount of awards that you've earned. Society says that you put in your best effort when you get first place. It's always associated to an award or a number next to that. How do you detach yourself from that? How do you say, okay, Coach Herbrook, I want to get first, but that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to give my full effort into it. And if that outcome happens to be that I get first place, awesome. But that's not why I did it.
Gosh, there's so many parts to being able to detach yourself. But I think I want to go in a couple different directions that they all kind of have the same theme. So going into this competition, I studied, I guess, I paid more attention to Tia Claire Toomey, who's the greatest CrossFit athlete of all time, and Ariel Lowen, who is the fittest woman in America currently. And she placed third at the games last year and is going back to the games this year. And the things that I kept going back to was this victory mindset and this champion mindset. And for Tia's very much like she's unstoppable. Like that is her whole thing. She wants to be unstoppable and she really is unstoppable. We'll see if someone can stop her. I don't know. I would say no. But like the champion mindset that she has, but even like in her book, she talks about having the champion mindset while still like being kind, while still like caring about the people next to you and loving the people next to you. But with Ariel Lowen has deep faith that she writes a different scripture on her board every week that she like memorizes and that she carries with into her training. And very much like victory mindset. But one of the things that I noticed with her is that she doesn't look at the leaderboard the entire time she's at the game. Like her goal last year was top 10, but she didn't look at the leaderboard. She went and she had fun. She did it joyfully. And I would argue to say she's one of the most joyful athletes I've ever witnessed. And so I went into this competition wanting to like channel those two women and those two inspirations that I have. But in doing so, I already have the experience to know that I'm already a winner. I don't need a number next to my name to say that I'm a winner. Number one, because like Jesus died for me and rose for me. And that means that I am a champion already. Like Jesus is my champion, but because he's my champion, I'm my champion. And so I went into this competition knowing that. And that allowed me to completely detach from the leaderboard. It would have been nice to win. It would have been nice to be, you know, in the top 10 or whatever. But like, I really didn't care about that. I cared about going in being the champion that I already knew that I was. And within that, also going back to the first question, like I had complex regional pain syndrome. Anything that I do is a win. I don't need to be whatever, but like I could have had that for the rest of my life. When I had my injury, I was working at this cakery in my town, and sorry, I said
My town.
I was working, and this guy came in, and I actually think that he was like my cousin's cousin or something because he knew my family and he knew who I was and that we've like gone to his family reunions. Anyways, he came in and said that he was diagnosed with the same thing and told me that like his doctor said that he'll never heal and all this stuff. And so I just heard the same crap that I was getting from him. And he was, you know, in his 50s at the time. And I was 16 years old. So to hear that, like in my head, okay, I have this for the rest of my life. The doctors are saying it. This guy is getting the same news. And I don't have it for the rest of my life. And so how do I not go in worried about a leaderboard, or how do I not go in feeling a certain way? Like I've already won. The fact that I'm able to walk up a slant going into a grocery store without pain is a win. And so going into the competition, I really looked at like how far I've come and that I already am a win. So I didn't really get distracted by the numbers.
Yeah.
During the weekend.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. I think the main takeaway from this is that Brandi randomly has a Southern accent. And I'm so glad that you all got to witness that with me, because it comes out all the time with town and down and some of these other words. And I burst out laughing because she randomly gets this Southern twang and then goes back to not having a Southern twang. But if
I blame being from a small town, but I also blame like my best friends from Louisiana. So I think like I randomly channel that I'm like from Louisiana. But it's funny because like I also will randomly get the Syracuse accent too. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. The Syracuse accent, the hard model that I still don't think exists, but Brandi and a lot of other loving friends have pointed out to me that I have a very Syracuse accent. So,
yeah.
But I want to kind of build upon that of looking at champions. And I think there's a lot of perception that people are champions because they're doing it for the gold medal. They're doing it to stand first place on that. And what ends up happening when you study these phenomenal athletes in the CrossFit space and in the non-CrossFit space, but like Rich Froning, for example, when he found his identity and found that he is a CrossFit athlete, that's part of him, but also that doesn't fully identify who he is as a person. When he detached from that is when he became a CrossFit Games champion time and time and time again. Matt Frazier, obviously, winning was great. He won 6 times in a row. But in that, he never looked at it and said, my only goal is to be here to win. Every year, the gap that he won by widened significantly, to the point that the past 2 or 3 CrossFit Games he was in, he didn't have to show up on the last day and he would have won. How does that happen? It happens because he says, I don't want to have any weaknesses. When a weakness is identified in my game, I'm going to go back and work on that weakness. Why? So that I can become the best version of myself that I can, that I can reach my full potential. And when you're only sold on the outcome of placement, you're not willing to put in the amount of work that it takes to truly become a champion. So it is fascinating that there's this kind of, to become a champion, you detach from that outcome, but you attach to putting in the hard work to better yourself in every avenue of life that you can. And if that result is becoming a champion, awesome. If the result is that you get second place, if the result is that you get 40th, 50th, 100th place, you're still satisfied with the result because you left everything out there. And that's not just for sports. That is for everything. Business, for relationships, everything. Can you pass peacefully saying, I put it all out there? Maybe I didn't achieve all of these things that I set out to achieve because society told me that I should achieve these things, but I put my full heart into this and I'm happy with that outcome. To me, that's a happy life. And if the other things come with it, awesome. And they probably will, but that's not why you should be doing it. And I was in a meeting the other night and I briefly said that I kind of struggle with it. It's about the journey, like not the destination. I struggle with that, but it is true that you spend the least amount of time at the destination. You spend way more time working, and then you get a brief moment at the destination and you have to soak all that in. So we will start wrapping up, and we are actually going to end with a hope story. My hope story is Brandi.
Oh my
and
goodness.
just everything she did in this past week, in these past few years. So that's my hope story. I'm going to chew up Brandi's hope story with a 2-part question. Looking back on the weekend, what were you the most proud of? And then looking forward prospectively, what are you the most excited for?
And that's my hope story.
Yeah.
Those answers.
Yeah. Or you can add in a different hope story,
Sure.
but
No, I love it. Well, I think I'm most proud of the like spirit that I brought into the competition, but also into the training. Like, I don't know, I was doing like 2 to 3 a days for like the months leading up to it. And I could have easily gotten into the mode of like, this is like, is this worth it? This is a lot of work. My body hurts. Like I could have gotten into like all these different modes, but like I really kept a great spirit for the most part throughout it, other than like a couple moments, right? But we all have moments. And so I would say I'm most proud of that, but I'm also most proud of just the camaraderie that comes with the sport and being able to compete, but like, you know, have my friend next to me and give her a high five, or talk with the other girls and be like, oh, I was trying to get you. And like, just things like that. Like it was really just, I don't know. I'm just really proud of that. And I'm proud of the reality that I really did like leave it all out on the table. Like if I choose not to ever compete at that event again, or if I don't make it compete at that event ever again, like I compete in a really awesome place, and I left my heart and all of my efforts and all of my abilities out there. And so I would say that's what I'm most proud of. What I'm most excited for is to just see where my potential is going to go. I was talking to my friend who competed, and she said that like she was upset with her performance, essentially. Like she was happy with it, but she was also upset with it. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of a paradox. Like you become like proud of yourself, but then you're also like eager for more. And when you see that you have potential, you want to achieve that potential tomorrow. And the reality is that just because you have potential doesn't mean you can achieve it tomorrow. So there's a lot of work that has to be put in. And I think that this weekend was a glimpse of like, I have a lot of potential. I really do within this sport, but I also have a lot of potential being able to carry this attitude into future challenging times. And I hope that I can continue to do that, but I know it is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. I think we can all say that you are very inspirational with what you've accomplished, and anyone that's experienced chronic pain, they know how difficult that is. And to be able to push through that, no longer have that part of your identity, to have complex regional pain syndrome and now go compete in a very extremely competitive event with heavy weights and a lot of impact through the legs, in a 2-day competition, and do that with a spirit of joy. It's impactful. And it makes me very excited to be your husband and to be your coach and to help you grow into that potential. Because there are difficult times with that, of training and just being like, oh, I know my weakness, but it's not, I'm working on it. I don't feel like it's getting better. And you almost need that outside perspective that shows you like, no, it is. Like you did 70 double unders. Last year you're at 20. Like that's a huge jump. I'm going to add a hope story in.
Well, first I want to thank you, because I genuinely could not have done this whole competition without you, but I also know I would not be out of chronic pain without you. And so thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I love you.
I love you. Hope story. It's a year of this podcast.
It has one whole year.
We are celebrating a year, and that's why I timed up so perfectly with a competition and then reflecting back on a competition, because it brings us right back to that year mark. And my hope story is that this past year has been incredible. The episodes continue to reach more people. We have some listeners in foreign countries that are hopefully real people, not robots. But it's exciting to get this message of hope out there and to just be able to interact with our community more and more and more. And that's our goal, is to keep this growing more and more. And to do so, we've decided that we're going to switch it up a little bit in the next year. Switch through Dunkaroo. If you watch our last episode, you knew that the background was a little bit different. If you're watching this episode, you can see our background, it's a little bit different. And when we kick off the second year of a podcast, it's going to look different again, both the scene, the studio, and the format of this. We've gotten some feedback, we've thought on it, and to honor Carol Dweck, the only constant is change. We're changing it. A lot of people, they like shorter episodes. They like maybe one of the questions, but they aren't really a fan of the other two. So we decided we're going to shorten it up. So what we're going to start doing is one question per episode. And in that question, we'll dive into some other questions that are related to that topic. But that way people have an easier time searching and listening to the ones that they want to. And if it's one that they're like, that's not really for me, then they don't have to listen to it. We're going to start doing that. And we're going to put the hope stories at the end of the episode, because we love starting with the hope stories because it gets everyone in the spirit of hope. But what we realize is that we want to end the episode with the spirit of hope, so that you can carry that forward with you through the week. And the last update is we're going to start releasing an episode every week. Not waiting 2 weeks anymore. It's going to be every week, but that episode is going to be shorter, but it will be more frequent.
Yeah. We are so excited for this change, and we think that you will be too, because the decision was truly meant to serve you better and serve our listeners better. And The great thing with sharing the hope stories at the end, like Dillon said, is that you're going to bring that spirit of hope with you. But we also love sharing other people's hope stories. So if you have hope stories, if you have questions, head over to our website, hopenotnope.org, and you can have us there, and we will feature it on future episodes.
Have a great week. And remember, every day is not an opportunity to just become hopeful. It's an opportunity to become hope.
The Hope Not Nope podcast is meant for educational, informational, and personal development purposes only and does not constitute any health or medical advice. If you're looking for specific advice, connect with us to work with a Hope coach. The Hope Not Nope podcast shall not be liable or responsible for any loss or damage allegedly arising from any information or suggestions in this podcast.